Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday morning snack program. I'm Mary McCormick, and it's my pleasure today to welcome you here. Before I introduce our speaker for today, I want to just mention that next week we're going to be joined by several engineering students from Marquette University who are part of the Engineers Without Borders team that we work with down when we are in Guatemala. And they're going to give us kind of some insight into how they do their work. And I've heard them speak before, and I think you'll find it very engaging and informative. And I hope you'll be back next week. Right now, though, I want to introduce Alex Chou. And Alex is a realtor with Keller Williams here in Milwaukee. He is a native of Milwaukee, having attended MPS schools and graduated from Nicolet High School. He has been a Rotarian for 5 years and a very active and engaged Rotarian on the membership program Snack and Invest in Milwaukee committee. He's also the current president of the Friends of Villa Terrace. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Alex and get started, and we're going to learn about what's going on in the real estate market.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Mary. And thanks to all of you for joining me. So Michelle has the slides up now. So let's see, I have to. So the first slide is a little bit about me. In past lives, I've done a number of things, but originally started in commercial real estate at Bank One. And you'll find that once you get into real estate, it never really leaves your system. You see a lot of education on my resume. And one of the reasons I like working at Keller Williams is because of its focus on education and training. It also is a great collaborative workspace. So in today's talk, I'd like to talk about 5 megatrends affecting residential real estate: the concentration of data, pandemic planning, interest rates, supply issues, and demographics. And I'll finish it off with some thoughts about racial equity. The usual disclaimer: these opinions are my own and are not necessarily those of Keller Williams or Keller Williams Milwaukee. So getting into the first megatrend, until about 20 years ago, the players in the residential real estate industry were relatively small and local. Real estate and the buying and selling of it employs many professions: inspectors, appraisers, builders, remodelers, lenders, title services. All of this is a lot of data to control from an investment standpoint. So when people see data, the dollar signs appear, and now backed by Wall Street, there's a lot of startups forming to collect the data. They collect the data, and then they are trying to provide predictive analytics as a service. Next slide. The traditional brokerage industry, as we know it, is actually now only a few large players. So all the names you thought were separate companies like Century 21, Coldwell Banker, Prudential, Berkshire Hathaway, Sotheby's, they're all just 4 companies. So into this mix, now there's 5 industry disruptors: News Corp, Compass, Redfin, EXP, CoStar Group. Next slide. And then there's Zillow. So Zillow started in Seattle in 2006. It's a NASDAQ traded company. It calls itself an aggregator of searches for homes for sale. Its revenue is quite a bit smaller than traditional brokers, but that's kind of misleading. So Zillow generates revenue from local brokers who are willing to pay for advertising on the site. Because of all its acquisitions, it's yet to make a profit. They have, however, created a national market for homes. So like 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't just try to search the internet for homes in Asheville, North Carolina. It was very difficult, and they've made it very easy. So Zillow's process is to acquire a lot of real estate related companies, and they're trying to create a vertical and horizontal monopoly. So in the next slide, I describe from the left is all the steps in the traditional home sale process. And then going to the right is what Zillow has done over the course of, say, 15 years and the acquisitions it's made to do that. The latest thing is they're trying to get into actual brokers. So is there room for the traditional broker? There's still things about brokers that haven't been replaced by the mega companies. So the short answer is yes. The megas want to do all the stuff without paying any salaries and benefits, but then they won't get the boots on the ground. The boots on the ground can actually, be your right hand when you're trying to buy or sell a house. The second mega trend I'll talk about is pandemic planning. There's both a short-term and long-term impact. Real estate brokers during the pandemic were deemed essential workers and they weren't subject to any shutdowns. However, there is a vast decline in open houses. Now you can only show to buyers pre-approved by lenders. Children and friends have been disinvited to the showings. There's masks, lots of hand sanitizer. You're discouraged from touching and opening doors and cabinets. And these are kind of enforced now because people have home camera systems. There's also strict showing windows of 15 to 30 minutes. So you can't really la-di-da, take your time in different areas of the house. You have to be pretty brisk and businesslike when you go look at a house. Also, lots more aspects of the transactions are done online. There's virtual showings, electronic earnest money, remote notarization, electronic funds transfers, even a lot of closings now are done remotely. So now I'll move into the long-term impact of pandemics, starting with indoors. So we've all seen the decline of office work, and where do they go? People have been spending more time at home doing remote work. So that means you need a lot more focus on your kitchens and appliances because you're cooking lunch and more meals at home. You need more bathrooms because more of the family is at home, and because if somebody gets sick, it's also good to have extra bathrooms. Mudrooms are a huge plus now, having a place to take off your shoes and clean up before entering the rest of the house. Home offices are now big. If you can designate a room that can be closed off for a Zoom call that doesn't look like your bedroom, that's great. If you lived in Whitefish Bay and had a basement home office that you used occasionally, suddenly that might become intolerable if you have to be there 40 hours a week. People are looking for better air filtration systems, air purifiers, better exhaust vents. So you're seeing a pendulum shift from the open concept plan. If the only place for your kids to study or for you to do your Zoom call is the kitchen counter, and the world is spinning around, family life is spinning around you, you may have a problem. At the same time, there's less entertaining, which was one of the drivers of open concept. Continuing on, media rooms and home theaters have increased in popularity, same with areas to do exercise and yoga. Finished lower levels, having good lighting everywhere in the house. Pets have become more important, so now you need a place for a kennel and bed. So all of these are driving more square footage in houses and a desire for more square footage. So the next slide is it was kind of amusing. Originally it was like pick two of these for what you want in your house, but some of these have moved from nice to have to must have, particularly A. So long-term effect of pandemics for outdoors, people are seeking better connections to nature to balance online life. A view, screen and porches, dining and kitchens, gardens, patios, landscaping, big backyards for kids and pets, fire pits, swimming pools, waterfront properties. All of these require more acreage. You're seeing a rebalancing from urban to rural areas. Big cities are relatively less attractive in a pandemic without dining, entertainment, and retail. Gas is cheap now, so people don't mind driving. There's a lot of talk of Zoom towns as long as the internet speed is acceptable. And former summer, winter escapes are now being occupied year round. So the big question is, are these permanent? COVID has caused a lot of people to do a rethink about their life, about how short it is, and has caused people to reevaluate their living situation. The other thing is a pandemic has happened. It could happen again until we fix our public health system and the world's public health system. It's kind of one of those fool me once or fool me twice, but some people don't want to be stuck on the back end of a pandemic. So the third mega trend is interest rates. I had to do it in two charts. The first chart shows interest rates over the last 100 years from 1910, and you'll see that they dipped to 4%, and 4%, as you can see, is historically incredibly low. The next slide shows from the 70s to now, and currently now we're at 3%. We were slightly below 3%, I think 2.6 or 2.7 for a 30-year. It's creeping back to 3% now, but still they're remarkably low historically. So here's some thoughts about interest rates. More people can afford a house, and people who have houses can afford more house. But on the horizon is the potential for inflation long-term because the government is printing money like crazy. The Fed has assured everybody that they can hold the rates low, and you see the bond market had a little hiccup last week. I kind of view it as like the little Dutch boy. They can't hold it off forever. It's kind of weird, you know, you wish you could sell high and buy low, but interest rates don't work that way. So the 2 points I have for takeaways is if you own and you haven't refinanced in 2 years, you could probably save hundreds a month off your monthly payment. The other is if you're thinking of moving in the next 2 years, you should consider it now because you can lock in lower rates. The fourth mega trend I'm going to talk about is the lack of supply. Historically, 6 months inventory is a balanced market. We're at 1 to 2 months. So now you have this lack of supply. The showing windows are only 24 to 48 hours to see and make your best offer. There's been a rapid inflation in prices, probably 8 to 10% for the Milwaukee area in 2020. And if you bid high, your appraisal may come in low because the older comps are priced lower. At the same time, there's a limited supply of new construction. So the supply is 3 years behind. The lots are limited because sewer and water infrastructure is very expensive to extend. In addition, there's building material inflation. Three factors. One is COVID restricted production, 2 is the Trump tariffs, and 3 is higher shipping costs. So as a result, new construction, for instance, in Milwaukee is only 4% of the market. Labor shortages also contribute to high construction costs. This is where I do a bit of editorializing. There's increasing shortage of people in skilled trades relative to what's needed as people retire. So if you're trying to find a plumber, an electrician, or a carpenter, it's hard, and they're back. They don't get back to you, or they take weeks to get back to you. A lot of people left the industry after the Great Recession. Remaining people can name their price in time. And at the same time, we're phasing out shop classes in most high schools. Even MATC doesn't have a plumbing class. So I also added, you know, there's been, at least in my lifetime, a longstanding prejudice about admitting minorities into skilled trades. I think I met 2 people last week that were saying, oh, you know, nobody's interested in getting into my business and I have all the business I can handle. I'm like, well, why don't you train somebody? And there just isn't that kind of passing on of knowledge. The fifth megatrend are demographics. The average Milwaukee first-time homebuyer is 39 years old. Millennials, who are the largest group of the economy right now, are in their peak home buying years. 41% of buyers are first-time home buyers. These millennials will eventually inherit in the great wealth transfer from the baby boomers. People are moving less often than they used to. So they used to move once every 7, now it's every 10. If you're a homeowner, it's gone up from 10. I'm not sure if that 20 is correct, but it's definitely higher than 10 now. So the next slide is those boomers. So the boomers constitute 1 out of 3 homeowners. They were expected to downsize in what was called a silver tsunami. Now you find that 80% of the people over 60 intend to age in place, 52% in their current home. Boomers can afford to wait. They expect to live longer in retirement. They're working longer. And then guess who inherited all the stuff that the silent generation depression hoarders saved? I found this quote that I found interesting. Contemporary US houses have more possessions per household than any society in global history. So they got to downsize before they can move. So downsizing is a big issue. At the same time, because of the pandemic, retirement communities were less attractive. They're also very expensive. So now you're seeing an uptick in interest in multi-generational housing. So all this has conspired to create a great market for sellers. COVID has reduced people's interest in selling right away. They don't want a lot of strangers in their house. Sellers are also concerned about finding a new house. The pandemic has left a lot of white collar workers largely unaffected and greatly affected blue collar workers. It's a fantastic time to sell. You see cash offers, contingencies being waived, like appraisals and inspections, and people still lose. You see brokers intentionally setting the price lower in order to start bidding wars. So I use the analogy of eBay. If you've ever done bidding on eBay, once you're in a bidding war, it gets to be a very competitive thing, and you kind of have run the risk of losing your mind while you're bidding, and that's exactly what people are looking for to get the highest price. In fact, it's so competitive. If you're a seller, you can ask for post-closing occupancy. Homes have typically sold in 1 week. Now on the lighter side, I have a slide about HGTV and design trends. I thought maybe people thought that that's what I was talking about. So these are some of the trendy things that are happening in the market these days. Finally, I'll talk a bit about racial equity. So affordability, there's a big gap between Black households and white households. Even Hispanic households have more trouble with affordability. Black households have more student loan debt. They're rejected for mortgage loans at 2.5 times the rate of white buyers. And now that they've wiped out the mortgage deduction, it's eliminated homeownership as a relative wealth aggregation advantage. Now, next slide, I talk about some racial equity challenges for the industry. There's a new focus now for brokers on fair housing and steering. Last year, Newsday came out with a report where they sent shoppers around the Long Island area and actually recorded brokers talking up and down neighborhoods. So the upshot is agents cannot talk to you about the average income of a suburb. They can't talk about crime. They can't talk about schools. They can't talk about religion. They can't talk about sex offenders. We have to redirect you to independent sources of information, or else it's steering. Another racial challenge for the industry is the lack of diversity in brokers, appraisers, home inspectors, lenders, and title companies. So these are all challenges that I think recognition is the first step. People are starting to recognize that these are issues, and they're going to be worked on over the next 10 years. So I think that's my presentation. I open it up for questions. If any.
I think we can unmute ourselves if you'd like.
Okay. That was quite a bit of information in 20 minutes, so thank you very much, Alex. So who would like to ask a question? I think Kendra.
Thanks for that presentation. I'm in the search right now. wondering if you anticipate an increase in supply in the next few months?
I think COVID, really removing COVID restrictions is going to cause an uptick in and of itself. So I would say yes. I think people, last year was so tense and nobody knew what was going on initially with what to do in a pandemic. And I think people are kind of settling into the new reality this year. So yes, I do believe there will be at least a loosening up of supply. And I think there are going to be people who are going to try to take advantage of the market.
Alex, I'm curious. Thank you so much. It was a really great, fast-paced presentation.
I'm sorry if I was a little worried. I was like, I can go back if you need to.
Well, I was curious about the DIY or whatever the trends slide was, because I only read the wood cabinets were out. And
oh, okay, I'll put them back. Okay, let's see. Or
We'll go back.
Michelle can help me with that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about that. So, so the nice, wood cabinets I put in my kitchen, 8 years ago that are all cherry, they're not in style anymore, nor is the granite. Everybody's look, it was originally the white look, and then everybody thought, oh, everyone's so sick of the white look, it's just too boring. So now they've, changed the cabinets up so that the tops and the bottoms are two different colors. Marble is very in, even though it's somewhat impractical as far as putting hot things on. So, but that's the style. So they get the full marble look sometimes by having the quartz laminate, the quartz crystal. Then these are, shiplap. I think that's just people being reactionary. It's like shiplap and barn doors because of the magnolia people, and that's kind of a little reaction. Gray was in for like 10 years. People are starting to move back to earth colors. Gas ranges are becoming unpopular because of the exhaust and the fact that people forget that when you run a gas, you're basically lighting a fire in your house, and the byproducts are like nitrogen dioxide and carbon monoxide. And if you don't vent those properly, you have a problem. And even if you do vent them, you're contributing to global warming. So electric things and induction are back in. Gold is making a weird comeback. We'll see how long that lasts. Wallpaper, now that it doesn't stick on your wall forever, is back in. So people are happy to use it for accent walls. I remember scraping off like 4 layers of wallpaper from my Whitefish Bay house, and it was terrible. And I swore I'd never do wallpaper again. But now it's more like putting a Post-it on your wall. And houseplants are back. So that's my little HGT Vote V moment.
I heard there are some cities in California where you can't, it's illegal to sell gas appliances.
Right. Berkeley has banned gas things.
It's not just here in Wisconsin either. I have a girlfriend in Nashville, and their houses are selling there in 2 and 3 days, and sight unseen. She has a realtor friend who has the last 6 houses he sold. The people never went into them. They were just sold by Zoom.
Yeah, I feel like there's certain things that necessitate going inside a house that you can't really just do by a video tour. So you can't tell how the house smells. You can't tell if it has a musty odor, or if somebody smoked cigarettes before. You aren't going to be able to tell how the lighting looks in every room, because with all the staging, you can't really tell if somebody lit the room artificially. So those are big deals. I personally wouldn't want to recommend anybody not go in a house.
Alex, speaking of staging, what is the nature of the Can anybody now sell a house that hasn't been professionally staged? In particular, given both the HGTV expectations and the remote, people not going into the house, the open houses.
I think I think expectations have really been raised by HGTV, and I think that the money that people put into staging, if you can possibly do it, is going to pay back in a higher price. Although, the counter argument is a lot of people say the best way to stage is to take stuff out of your house, because most people have way too much stuff in their house. And if you declutter a lot, that immediately helps stage your house.
In Milwaukee, are we seeing any trends of people leaving the city for the suburbs?
I think, I think it takes a little while for statistics to catch up with what's happening. But from what I can tell, suburban homes, I live in Mequon, the ones that used to sit and languish on the market are moving. They move faster than they used to. I think there's still enough pent-up demand, though, to backfill and buy city homes. So it's hard to tell if there's a true migration or it's just new people coming into the market.
I was talking to my brother last night who lives in West Hartford, Connecticut, which is central Connecticut, about 2 hours from New York City. And he said a lot of the houses in West Hartford are being bought by people who are leaving New York. That is just surprising to him how far.
New York is a perfect example of people, once there's no reason to go in the office, once there's no Broadway, once all the restaurants are shut, what's the attraction of being in a big city like New York? Yes, it could probably change on a dime, that it could return to normal and people could be motivated to go back to offices 5 days a week. But I think in the back of people's head, they're still going to think, but what if there's a pandemic? And I think all of us have been scarred and are going to be remembering that for the rest of our lives. Yeah, it's a brave new world.
Well, there was a lot of information on your slides. Would it be okay if anybody wants them, if they ask Michelle to send them out in case they want to look at them and study them a little bit and call you with questions?
Oh, sure. Yes, I didn't want to run the risk of being so wordy I would bore everybody. So I'm happy to let everybody look at it at their leisure.
Yeah, it was very well put together. So thank you very much for doing that, Alex. And it's 12:30. So if anybody has any more questions for Alex, please do that. Otherwise, he's very accessible and very, very knowledgeable about many things, and always a pleasure to talk to him. So if we don't have any more questions, I guess we can sign off for now.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Alex. Great program.
Sure. Thank you.